quote tweet this.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show that never ends. The Overreaction Sunday. We're talking about the Jackets' mediocre showing in Birmingham, and what's going on in the portal, and kind of what the expectations are for the next couple of weeks as the football staff will actually go out on the road pretty soon. So for the first time since November, I think. Recruiting's going to heat up especially for 2026. We'll probably start to see the first flow of commitments on that end of the floor, and then that end of the thing, and then obviously the big thrust of activity right now is to finish out the portal before school starts. I should have had that information in front of me. I feel like it's like January 10th or something is Georgia Tech's drop ad date. So
yeah, I think when
so it's the last of, so it's not just the registration, it's like the last of it. Sorry.
I know all the early enrollee recruits were telling me they were moving in January 6th, so I guess it's right there around that.
So that's the first day of classes is the 6th, and then the deadline for registration is January 10th. So that's like the absolute dead last day that you can get somebody in into school for the spring semester, which is ideally what you want to do in the portal now. Georgia Tech did add JJ Vandenberg. They added Thomas Gore. I'm trying to think if they added anybody else. Josh Beetham in the second portal window, which will open in the spring in April. So lots going on. Obviously, the roster you have at the end of the first week of January or whatever won't be the final one. Georgia Tech should start announcing their portal commitments next week, or this coming week, I guess would be the way to put it. They didn't want to do it during the bowl game, but those guys have signed their grant aids and have leases on apartments, all of those things, or student living or whatever. For the most part, you feel confident they're locked down. Obviously, you could still wiggle out until you could have wiggled out until the portal closes. Once you sign that grant aid, you actually have to go back into the portal. So that's a whole other like animal with some of this. So there is a little bit of protection for some of the schools with the guys that have committed there that have signed paperwork at schools. So that sort of is the end around about instead of signing a national letter of intent, you sign this this grant aid. But yeah, January 10th would be the drop dead date to add somebody to the program. But there's several guys getting ready to make decisions here. There's some guys that will be spring portal additions that we've talked about a little bit that are coming in. Maybe they're finishing school somewhere else. And then there's some guys that will come in the summer as well from the class, like Grady Adamson and Dalen Penson and some of those guys. As far as what's going on, obviously the bowl game the other night, and then the awful drive that most of us that were there made back from Birmingham through terrible weather across I-20, like in a caravan. Apparently, at some point, one of the parents told me there was like a bad wreck near Talladega or something that closed down part of the interstate for a little while. I don't know if that was before or after the game, but it was an unpleasant game to watch on multiple levels as a media person, someone that has deep caring relationships with a lot of these people involved in this. They're friends, and then as a football fan, it was difficult to watch the officiating and how bad it was, how much impact it had in the game, and then how flat Georgia Tech looked in the first half of that game, and maybe in the early part of the third quarter too. So just bad, bad, bad. This Birmingham Bowl, the Birmingham Bowls I've all been to have been weirdly bad games like that. Actually, that was my fourth Birmingham Bowl that I've covered. Covered some for Wake Forest and South Florida in the past. Back when I was in Legion Field. I mean, is what you get. You win 6 or 7 games, you don't really get a lot of choices in your bowl thing. And I know there's a lot of people that feel like Georgia Tech got shafted, but when you look at it, the teams they lost to, all of the ones that went to the bowls that were slightly ahead of Georgia Tech, with the exception of North Carolina, who went to a game that I don't think Georgia Tech had any interest in playing in. So that's where it is. It is what it is. It's over with now. You focus on the future. Trying to compete for an ACC championship, building up your defense, replacing key parts on your offense, and moving ahead. Alex, you were sitting next to me during the debacle in Birmingham on multiple fronts, and it was something. I mean, and credit to Vanderbilt, by the way. Like, I don't want to short them. They did what they needed to do to win the game. It's how they've won all year. It's not been pretty most of the year. They just kind of grind it out and figure out a way to win, and they held on and won the game. So credit to Vanderbilt. Listen, I feel like some of their fans are feeling like the stuff about the officiating, all that is taken away from that, but I don't think it is. I think it's just more of a commentary on how bad it was and how much of a momentum swing it was in the game. Because the reality is, you don't know what would have happened had you not had such questionable officiating and penalties. And maybe Vanderbilt, storms right back and retakes the lead or whatever in those momentum moments. But we'll never know that because the officials imposed their will on the game in a way that was inappropriate, I thought.
It was. I don't want to get too much in the officiating because I've made my thoughts well known with my recap and my tweets for the last 2 days. But I just let's go to the game first. It wasn't, Georgia Tech didn't play well. They probably didn't deserve to win. Pavia was just, I think I told you afterwards, like, he's one of those players if he was on your team, you would love him, and if he's not, you're gonna hate his guts because he's that kind of player. But he's tough. He don't go down. He's hard to tackle. He's not the greatest, most polished passer in the world, but he makes throws when he needs to, and he moves around in the pocket. He's just a very tough college player and a tough one to prepare for. And he had a really good day. And Georgia Tech didn't have a great day tackling. They didn't have a great day in coverage a lot of times, and stupid penalties on their, legitimate penalties they had that, there were some of those, but the officiating itself is just, it's kind of a disgrace. And I don't blame officials for losses anymore. I used to do that a lot, but I mean, they impacted the game. There's no doubt about that. And I used to be in the camp where you just throw your hands up and say, well, bad officiating is part of it. And like, you just got to overcome that. I just hate saying that anymore. And I think that's not good enough for college football. There needs to be some kind of solution to figure this out. I think you need to get rid of conference officials. Like, just have a national officiating organization that controls everything. So you don't have, certain conferences are better than others. Certain conferences get better officials, and I don't know. The whole thing needs to change. There needs to be more control, up in the booth, looking at cameras, and instead of everything being judgment calls and referees overruling everybody, their own, the other officials on the field. Like, something's got to change. It's not good enough for college football. I mean, it's
so there was a guy on the board, Alex, that posted something I said privately to a football coach we all know, and that is, if you followed international soccer 20, 30 years ago, there were guys that bad things happened to some officials in games that had down in like South America and some of these places during these games. And with all the gambling and stuff that goes on now, and someone brought this up on the board, and I've said it privately a couple of times, even after the Georgia game, like if there's people who spend stupid money on this stuff, some people gamble like for fun like you do, but like other people do not, and they spend crazy money on stuff, and like something bad might happen. These people are not like shielded, and I'm afraid it's going to take something bad happening to spur change, and that's not what we want to see as in a sport that we all care and love so much. I think, to me, I think now with the ability of replay and those things, I think there's a way technology wise to do it quickly for any play that's over 10 yards. You already have them standing in the middle of the field half the time discussing the penalty before they throw a flag. You can have some command center where they review every play and watch, and they can see the 22 and look at the play and see if it's fair. So like the Warren Burrell face mask, where they face masked each other, TV showed one angle, which got a bunch of people mad at me on Twitter. And in the stadium, we watched a different clip that showed the beginning of the play where the guy grabbed Warren's helmet. And then at the end of the play, you could actually see him grab it too, because his head ducks down at the end of the play where the guy grabbed it again. They grabbed each other's. It should have been an offsetting penalty, and they should have replayed the down. There was just a bunch of stuff like that, and those are impacting a lot of the Omar Daniels one at the end of the UGA game on a ball that was probably actually tipped anyways. That should have been at PI was a terrible call. The one on Trent Tatum was a terrible call, and there's been some that have gone Tech's way as well. Tech's been beneficial a couple of times this year, but a lot less than they're getting hit with, and so. I just feel like you got to do something because it's making too big of an impact in the game, and we get with pass interference. What I call what you see in the NBA is like when they like wait to see if somebody makes a basket before they call a foul,
Right.
like at the rim. You see this in the college game a lot too.
Yeah.
We're seeing that with PI a lot, right? Like if they don't catch the ball, then the flag comes out real late. Like just call it or don't call it, but like I think that it's having a big impact on these games, and I'm seeing it across not just a Georgia Tech thing, but seeing it across the board. And obviously, there's bigger problems in college football. The portal being chief among them, which has basically eliminated Alex and I sleeping for the last 2 weeks. It probably still got another day or so of names. As for those who don't know, the portal, the way it works is the names are submitted. The school has 48 hours to put them into the portal. So even though the portal closed, you'll still see people going in. And then there's a certain window after a bowl game where guys can go in as well if their team was playing in the postseason. So there's a lot of different stuff. I posted on the board today, but there's about 5 or 6 guys who I expect to leave that I don't think anybody's going to lose a lot of sleep over. But we're still going to see some more post bowl game portal movement.
Well, I mean, just from the ones that have come in, like the amount of guys that they've gotten in the past 2 weeks, there's got to be something on the other side. Like somebody's could have come out. You listed some people on the board today that you think is going to go in possibly. Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
I didn't. I sent you a list of people
I thought,
privately.
that's right. I think
that wasn't for the board. That was for
I'm
you.
glad I didn't say the name, any names, but I thought you listed some on the board. I don't know. I guess it's all running together, but um, I don't know. I don't want to spend the whole thing talking about officiating, but going back to that, I just think that like coaches and players are held accountable for terrible games, like bad things to do. Officials, like I understand they're not full time officials. They do this on the weekend. Some of them. That's another thing that I think maybe need to change. We need to have full time officials. There's enough money made where that can happen. It can't be some guy that's a insurance salesman during the week in Birmingham, Alabama, or like a lawyer from Atlanta that's calling these big time college football games one day a week. But like officials need to be held accountable too. Like there needs to be you need to be penalized. You need to like be taken off of games. You need to be given tough bad assignments if you have bad games officiating. Coaches are
Well, I think
fired.
Georgia Tech may have been the bad assignment for the Big
I
Ten
guess.
official / MAC officials, or wherever the hell they were in that game. I think that's where they're from.
I guess
I think
so.
to be honest, that was probably like their, F crew, H crew, or something. It was not the A crew. The A crew is probably getting, the uh, the Sugar Bowl or something like that. They're not doing the Georgia Tech game. So that, just to also point that out to people again, what happens when you go 7-5, 6-6? You don't control much of your destiny. So that's part of it too.
And I
Sorry,
don't
I wasn't
think.
trying to interrupt you. Just
No, you're good. You're good. I know people will comment about that on the board, like making jokes, but I don't think like there's people even on the board I've seen last few days, like I don't think officials are like, I'm not at the point where I'm saying that they're fixing things or like that whatever. I just think they're bad. Like that's my opinion on it. I just think they're bad. There's and it's not all on them. Too much is left up to judgment calls and them kind of taking the word of the other officials what's right. And that kick catch interference, like the guy threw the flag and then he got talked
the
out
guy
of
who's
it.
staring at it through the
Yeah,
flag.
yeah,
Let's
he threw
not.
the
Let's
flag.
also not like miss that part of it.
He got talked out of it, but and because another guy said he got blocked into him. Well, when you get blocked into a guy, it don't mean you wrap up the returner and drive him to the ground for a form tackle. Like, let's have some common sense. The guy threw the flag to say no, it's kick catch interference. Like, stand up for your call. Um, but anyways, Georgia Tech didn't play well. Haynes King probably had one of his worst games of the year. Really, he didn't. They couldn't really run the ball with him very much, and that kind of takes away some of their offense. Jamal Haynes had a really good game. I thought the offensive line played decently well. I mean, the pass protection wasn't great at times, but um, I don't know.
Jamal being healthy, you could really see the difference
Yeah,
between when he's healthy and when he's not. And he played most of the season not healthy, and it showed. I want to get to this because this is kind of a pertinent question before we get too far down into the weeds. Harold's asking, saying the portal shouldn't open until after bowl games. Um, it's a bigger disadvantage to the team that loses a player than the team that acquires one. Yes, but the reason why they're doing that is so kids have the opportunity to join a team in the spring. If it doesn't open until after the bowl games, then all those kids are stuck and basically fall half a year behind at their new school. So that's the theory behind it. I agree that it's bad that you have guys like jumping off these playoff teams, backup quarterbacks, key guys. Some guys are staying and play There's a guy at UConn, like their star receiver, I think played in their bowl game. He's in the portal now, Skylar Bell. He actually played in their bowl game, I think. So it's a weird thing. This we all know this. It sucks. Let's call it how it is, right? It sucks right now that the way all this is set up. It's not fun. There needs to be some sort of oversight in all of it, but the NCAA will not do anything because they're scared to get sued out of the business and get pushed out. And so, um, I don't know.
and the
Uh,
and the academic calendar is like a big part of the transfer portal too.
Absolutely.
Like,
And unless you're on quarters, if you
right.
were on a quarters in a West Coast team like Oregon State, I think is, or somebody, everyone else would just be screwed because everyone starts around the same time Georgia Tech does, that first week of January or whatever. And that would give you basically no window to take visits or see any schools or do anything else. If you had to wait until January 1 or something to go, or January 2 to go in the portal, that would give you a whopping 8 days to make a decision, which would be tough.
And I like, to me, I don't know if they'll do it, but I would like, I think a simple solution would be to make it one transfer portal window after the spring semester instead of this right after the season ends, like during bowl games. Just make the whole thing at the end. I know that would really kind of make it tough on roster management and stuff a little bit for coaches, but I think they would make that sacrifice for not having to work 24 hours a day during end of the season, bowl season, signing day
But you
versus.
have people all over the map with this because it depends on your portal structure. If you're Florida State and you're leaning hard into the portal, it's a different animal than if you're Georgia Tech and you're just trying to supplement at key spots. Taking 15 guys or whatever. And I've seen other programs taking 40 or 50. Um, Yeah, it's a weird deal. I don't know how you, but now also the other thing is you have all the summer OTAs and those acclimations and stuff that you can do short of actually practicing. So there are some sort of carve outs to make it a little bit more palatable to join. I don't know. It's a tough situation.
It's just a lot of stuff hit college football all at the same time, and the NCAA just had no plan for it. NIL, transfer portal, all this stuff is just
Well,
like,
kept losing in court, being stubborn about all of this stuff, and that's what caused all of it.
yeah.
Hal's asking about full time paid refs or the same guys reffing, more training, need a head ref in the press box looking at replay with the power to overturn the call. The problem with having like one guy in the box, I think, and this is why I think you need like a command center idea, is these guys all become buddies with each other. They travel together. And then it's like, I don't want to overturn Jeff's call because Jeff's my guy. It was sort of a bang bang play. And you get into that BS. And like, I think you can't do that. So I don't know. I'm not the, you know, I'm sure somebody can come up with a good solution. I don't know if it's making them full time. Some of them do call football, men's basketball. Some don't, because if you do that, then you're on the road, you know, 150 days a year or something. So then that's tough to have anyone that has a lot of life balance doing that. They showed one of these basketball refs the other day. I was watching a college basketball game, and he had been on the road like 40 straight days or something calling games to open the season. Like, I don't want to see that either. Um, yeah, they do need to expedite these reviews. I don't know. Again, that's a technology manpower thing. Like I said, you could have a like a command center where you have whatever, however many games are played at one time. You know, 15 to 20, I think, maybe at one time block, maybe 30 at the most, in a really busy time block, and have maybe it's P4 has a command center and the G5s do or something. I don't know how you do it, but there's got to be a better way of doing some of this, because I think everybody's watching like I mean, look at that Texas Georgia game and like the fans going nuts and like them reversing the call on that pick six or whatever it was. Like, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on, and it's just crazy. And I think you need, yes, Andrew's saying the centralized, like the MLB having a central, and I think that's what maybe makes the most sense to do. Have somebody that's detached from all of it, just making the calls. Um, but we all have lots of ideas. They don't like to spend money, so what do we know? What's going to happen?
That's
Let's dive into the questions, man. We've already gone for like
yeah,
what 20 minutes without even
that's the,
touching a question.
that's right. I mean, that's the thing. I'll wrap up the officiating part, but just like, I don't know if my ideas or your ideas or anybody's ideas, but I just think something needs to change because this current thing ain't working. Like,
100%.
so that's the whole thing. Um, let's get into the questions here. Well, the first question is from Smooth for Life 678. Do you see Tech looking to make any major upgrades in the portal? I think they've already made some pretty good upgrades. I mean, the
And
portals,
the portal,
yeah, like they've hit on
I
some
mean,
pretty
defensive
good.
tackles, the one thing sort of you still need to see some movement on in terms of portal additions. But they've made some pretty. I mean, they got one of the better running backs of the portal. They got arguably one of the top wide receivers, and then another wide receiver who's probably a top 50 guy. One of the top linebackers, one of the top edge guys. A couple of decent DBs. Um, a young linebacker you could take a shot on. Matthew Alexander, the one D tackle they got, they need to add probably two more inside guys to kind of help balance that out. Um, I don't know. What do you think?
I think they've added some really good players. I know the running back Hosley, like the big name that everybody was talking about a few weeks ago, which was Justice Haynes, the secret visit or whatever. But like, I think Georgia Tech got the guy they wanted. I don't want to sit here and say they wouldn't have took Justice Haynes, but um,
They got
Hosley,
exactly the piece that was missing.
yeah, he's very productive. He's exactly what they needed in the backfield. Um, I mean, just go look at what he's done the first 2 years at Penn. I know it's Ivy League or whatever, but that those kind of numbers, like he jumps right on the college scene and produces like that. I think that shows you what kind of player he is. The linebacker from Oregon State, he's just a flat out tackling machine. Like he's all over the place. I know Georgia
Great
Tech.
pass coverage.
Yeah, and Georgia Tech fans remember PJ Davis, undersized a little bit. I think he's under 6 feet. Just all over the place. Yeah, the kid from Mercer, like, I mean, I think he had 18 tackles for loss this year. Like, I don't care what level, if it's Mercer or, playing the SEC, if you're a defensive end that's got that kind of ability to shed blocks or get off the edge, that's going to translate. So he's a really good addition. I don't know. I mean, I think they've hit it out of the park in the transfer portal. There's obviously still they need to add a few more pieces defensive line wise. But yeah, I think they've done a really good job in the portal. I don't know how many more spots they're taking, but I think they've had a pretty good portal cycle. So
I agree.
So.
Let's hit the next one, my man.
All right. Let's see here. There's a question about when Key lost his cool in the third quarter. Do you think that was kind of a boiling point for the last two games? Kind of game changing calls, or just kind of sticking up for his team? I think it was a little bit of everything, kind of just getting to him. Like he's probably felt like he's got the short end of the stick last two games, and that just that second half on Friday was. It put him over the top, and I know everybody on the board's been asking for him to react like that, so they got what they wanted. So, I mean, I don't blame him at all. Sometimes you gotta make an example for when you feel like you're getting the short end of the stick, and I feel like they did, myself. So, it is what it is. I think it was everything added up, and he had enough of it. So,
it's hard to blame him. I mean. It was a wild ass game. Like, there's no way around that.
Here's a question from Big Daddy Buzz. It says, "How much pressure, if any, is on the ACC to get a new commissioner?" That's I think you're more plugged in than that. I mean, than I am. I don't know. That's probably a question for you.
I think it'll be interesting what comes to sort of a head after this season. It's he's definitely not doing a great job of selling in a time where you need someone to be more upfront, like a Greg Sankey is. And obviously the basketball right now is terrible in the league, and then football, you've had a lot of bad showings in bowl games. Now I will say that the reality of the bowl game situation is so weird from team to team and the matchups and who has guys playing and who doesn't, and like Duke doesn't have their quarterback for their game, or like North Carolina with an interim coach, or Georgia Tech going a game that maybe their players weren't super excited about. All of those things factor into all of this. You had that wild ass pick game with Toledo where they were in a bowl game they shouldn't have normally been in because of the fact that all the bowl matchups were maxed out. So, yes, they need to figure the ACC is a perspective issue more than anything else right now. The SEC, as I recall, went through this last year where they stunk in the first half of the bowl season. It's going to happen year to year, but right now it's the optics don't help when you have the Kurt Herb streaks of the world, trying to push this party line literally like a politician, like pushing out like whatever their talking orders are from the committee chair or the head of the party. It's an interesting time. We live in a world of perception, and right now it's not great for the ACC. So I definitely need to explore some options. What I've talked about, and apparently leagues talked about privately as well, is trying to figure out how to have a visible personality, a la a Paul Feinbaum, that is the positive person to push the problem. There is, it can't be like Danny Cannell or people that like Danny's I like Danny Cannell, okay, but he's like painted himself as too much of a
he hates the SEC. Like it's
yeah,
not.
like there it's a little clownish at times, and so
Yeah,
like it's
it's over
hard.
the
Like
top.
you need, and I don't know who that person would be. Like you need an active voice to push back, and the problem is most of the ACC people aren't really built like that. So I don't know. Wow, this is a crazy ass question. This is maybe the craziest question seen in the chat this year. Uh, our guy here asked if Key goes 7-6 next year with an easier schedule on paper, is he on the hot seat? No. No,
They would.
like what do you like, let's take a time out for a second. Like what do people expect? Like right now, like you're in the middle of a transformational period in college football. You have a coach who's outperforming his level of talent in terms of what they're achieving on the field relative to their schedule strength. I saw somebody that had them winning like 4 games this year. It was Billy Conley or one of them had them at like, not even going to a bowl game this year. Like your coach is punching above his weight and everything's relative to what's going on with your program. If those wins are like, if he's losing to, what is like the G5 game next year that they play? They have Colorado and Georgia
They played Temple or that 2 years.
next year.
I
I
can't
gotta
remember.
bring this up. It's one of those things that I'm not committed to memory yet because we haven't seen the football schedule because the ACC always rolls it out in January, end of January. Georgia Tech, yeah, has Temple next year and Gardner Webb. If you're losing to Temple and Gardner Webb, then yes, then maybe that's something. But like y'all got to like chill the hell out. Like you start firing. This is why you didn't see a lot of coaches get fired now either. There's no one to hire to replace these people. Like if you go and start firing coaches into the sun, you're not going to get anybody.
I mean, I don't know. Keys. I've said it on here before. If Key's not a guy that can do the job, then I don't know who is. Like I mean, I hate to sound like he's from what he took over, which was an absolute disaster. From everything that I've heard from inside the program, the way it was run by the guy before, for him to like reorganize everything and like get positive momentum going recruiting wise, the way he's brought talent in through the portal. I mean, he's gone to a bowl game 2 straight years for the first time in a decade. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't just take. It's very rare where you take a huge leap. You got to build up. Like you got to take
And
steps.
here's the thing: I haven't written about this yet, but it's something I thought about, and I don't think I've talked about it on here yet. But the reality is, the portal allowed Georgia Tech to shortcut about 2 years of being like 4 or 5 win team and jumping ahead a little bit because um, you had a Haynes King situation. You were able to add like these defensive linemen this past year. Some of those things allowed you to shortcut. Georgia Tech actually benefited more from the portal than a lot of other teams, even though they were losing some guys here and there. And it gave Key an opportunity to turn things around a little quicker because he had a good staff and they had a good eye for talent, especially in the portal. And then the younger guys, the Josh Petties of the world, or the JP Powell or Dalen Pensons or whatever, those guys will um, start to take things and get things moving. And all right, this dude's now bringing up Chan Gailey. What got Chan fired was that he couldn't beat Georgia. Like it wasn't that he was going 7-5, and Chan had really good talent. Chan also had a terrible offense that was brutal to watch week after week. I covered one of those games every single year when Chan was there when I was covering Georgia, and he lost the fan base. Brent's done none of those things. Like Brent's competed with Georgia toe to toe for 3 straight years with lesser talent and a significant gap in talent. And it's getting closer and closer. And I think it's amazing that people, again, are like drawing those parallels too to what Chan was doing with literally the greatest college football player in modern Georgia Tech history at wide receiver for 3 of those years, and lots of NFL talent. Who's the last? Who's going to get drafted in the first round off these teams? These are apples and oranges comparisons too, man. Like I appreciate where you're coming from, but I think it's a bad mindset for fans to have. Like you're out of your mind if you think this guy who's slowly building your team up is not the guy for the job. You know, if he's winning 7 or 8 games the next couple of years, like Georgia Tech is not Alabama, it's not Georgia, it's not bankrolled like Ohio State or Michigan. Understand where you are in the world a little bit. It's going to take more time than that to get up there.
I just saw Reggie Ball, Pat Nix in the comments too.
I like Reggie as a friend. Pat Nix was a really terrible offensive coordinator.
Yeah, those were the
No
days.
one, and here's the other thing: people are trying to hire his staff actively because he's hiring good coaches. Right? How many times did Buster Faulkner's name come up, and you still have Georgia fans trying to come up with like these elaborate conspiracies of how he's going to end up as their offensive coordinator or whatever. It takes time. They're building the core of a team. They're also trying to win in the interim. He's not doing, a bad job. They're punching above their weight. And I think what has people frustrated is they're actually much better than any of us anticipated them being this quickly. So they have 4 losses this year in all games they probably could have won or should have won when you go back and look at it on paper. Um, and so that's the other thing in all this, right? Like you look at that Louisville game or Syracuse, if they adjust the defense earlier, Louisville, if they start throwing it earlier, and don't have all the implosion mistakes in that game. What happens against Georgia if you just have any number of about 10 plays go your way in the second half of that game. And I think that while Brent is still also learning as a young coach, that's also part of the deal here too. They brought him in to do that and be his job is to oversee the program. He's not Paul Johnson. He's not going to give you some offensive dynamic thing or, you know, whatever O'Leary was bringing to it is, their defenses weren't that great when he was here, but they had good talent. Um, Brent's job is to oversee the program. We're not going to fully see his vision until you get a couple recruiting cycles in, those players through strength and conditioning and all of that. And so, um, I don't know.
There's a comment up above about building depth. I think that's the biggest thing that the way he's recruited in portal the last few years, and especially he's an offensive lineman. He knows the game's won with offense and defensive line, and that's where they've gotten so much better in the past 2 years. Like, and it's going to keep getting better, I believe, with who they've got coming in. So
You
that
put
I
in
mean,
a true freshman at left guard. There was a guy they flipped from Vanderbilt that no one expected to play, that a lot of people thought was a throw in with Graham Knowles, a quarterback, and Harrison Moore. He played meaningful snaps in every game. He was a man in that Georgia game for them. He played really well in the Vanderbilt game coming in for Joe Fusel. Everyone's banging on Joe Fusel. Joe Fusel's not healthy, and he's been playing through a pretty significant injury this season and tried to gut it out. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people don't understand. Like, or don't bother to ask the questions, or don't pay attention to the answers when they're given to them. And then, oh, Joe Fusel is terrible, or whoever. And it's not really the case. There's usually more to the story. And I've articulated a lot of this, but again, there's so much information coming out. I think a lot of people miss stuff and whatever. And but Bradley, I agree with you. Brent is still learning how to coach. Bradley's saying Brent is average and he's get better, probably will, but right now he's average in your opinion. He is not giving you a huge X's and O's advantage yet in terms of maybe his in-game coaching, clock management, those things. He did make some pretty wise decisions. The way he coached that final 7 minutes after that storm break in the Birmingham Bowl is a great example of that, to give them a shot to win the game. He used his timeouts correctly. He That was his best coaching job in a while, was that final 7 minute stretch there where they tried to get back into that game. It was just they lost all the momentum, and and I think part of too, going back to why Brent blew up, is I think some of that was boiling over still from the Georgia game and what happened there and them getting screwed on some calls, and I think all of that maybe just boiled him over. And it happens to all of us, man. I've lost my temper. We've literally seen it on here before, or on the boards or whatever on Twitter. Like, we all kind of hit a breaking point sometimes, and that's life, man. He's a real person. Guess what? everyone's seen Kirby do it. They just have a lot of fans who will make excuses for it. Georgia Tech fans are less forgiving for whatever reason, or less backing of their coach in that circumstance at this point.
Yeah, Kirby shoved a Mississippi State player. So
Yes, he did. He did, and somehow didn't get flagged for it too, which is unbelievable. Because if literally pretty much anyone else other than maybe like I don't even know if anyone else would have got away with that. So
yeah, the depth thing we talking about again. Yeah, the depth thing. Like with the injuries we had this year, and they got to step up that probably weren't expected to play a whole lot. I think he did a pretty good job, like putting band-aids on things and still getting to 7-6. So yeah, I don't know.
yeah, Brent got flagged for breaking up a fight essentially, and then they picked that one up, and they got flagged again for blowing a stack on the punt return fiasco, which was literally a fiasco of a play on multiple levels. But yeah, I won't get into it, but there apparently is a lot more to the story. Hopefully, I'll be able to tell you guys one day a little bit more about it. As I'm still hearing bits and pieces of some of the stuff that happened in that game with the officiating that were troubling to someone that covers program and wants to see a fair, fun game. And again, not trying to take away what Vanderbilt did. I think that's something that like people on the internet or whatever can't piece those two things together, because I want Ken or Alex, or I wanted to talk to an official or whatever. People think we're crying about it. I wanted explanations on a couple of the calls that made no sense to me. It wasn't that I thought that's why they lost the game. They got beat, fairly most of the game anyways. Like that wasn't, they play well enough to win. Vanderbilt played better and had their crap together from the jump. But when the refs are also, when you finally kind of get it together in the second half and are starting to make your comeback, and then refs are interjecting themselves into the game, it becomes a big problem. So there's a lot. There's just a lot to it, and I think our frustrations as people who cover it is seeing a couple of instances of this season where it really did make a big difference. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
17-7 Falcons up at halftime. I just saw that score. Sorry to get distracted there.
Yeah, it's okay.
There's a question on here about kind of how the ACC treats Georgia Tech. Is it still kind of they're kind of asking about the triangle in North Carolina?
Well, if you look at the men's basketball schedule, it's pretty poor. They played Carolina and Duke, one on the road and one at home. It's their first ACC games, which was like the second time in 3 years they've done that, I believe. So I don't know. It was they're the Carolina Mafia or whatever you want to call it, like the I don't know. I think people give them sometimes too much credit. I think the person who is in charge of scheduling has done a really poor job over the years with it, and that was a complaint that Paul Johnson, Jeff Collins, and probably Brent would have. I haven't actually asked Brent about it, but it just felt like the scheduling has not been great. Yeah, the Tobacco Road Mafia. There you go.
Well, like I said earlier, like in basketball wise, now you got Duke and Carolina out of the way, and now you don't have to play them the rest of the next 2 months.
That is the one benefit. I mean, it could easily win like 10, 12 games now, like with the way that the league's so bad, so you never know. I'm holding out hope they get it together. I'll be traveling to some basketball games here. Right now, I've traveled booked through January. We'll see how they're doing after that point and adjust. And Alex will, with everything changing, will shift into doing some women's basketball and football recruiting. So we're able to kind of switch gears and give you both if you're interested in both. And then obviously baseball will start up in February as well. So
I'm excited about women's basketball. That's the first full game I sat down and watched this afternoon. They are good. They're just a good team, good players. They play they play good basketball. They move without the ball. They pass the ball well. They don't turn it over. It's just like, I don't know. I think people should be really, really excited about that team. I know a lot of people don't give a whole lot of care for women's basketball, but that's a team. If you're a Georgia Tech fan, you should get behind because I think they're going to have a pretty good year coming up. I'm excited to get to some of those games. But there's a question about grading the portal class so far. I think we kind of talked about that.
I mean, Rivals has them in the top 10, so
I mean, I
that
would
tells you
give
what
it.
you need to know, right? Like,
Yeah, I'd give it a B plus, A minus personally. But I mean, they hit on about the priority guys that they wanted. I think they got most of them. There's one that lingered around and didn't commit, and then ended up going to the Birmingham Bowl champions. But we won't talk about that one too much. Um, that we might have had a draft ready for.
oh, the sea snake, yeah. Nancy with a question. Are there still a couple portal commitments coming as Georgia Tech? Yes on portal commit. I expect some more commitments in the portal, yes, before school starts. Has Georgia Tech contacted the UNC linebacker? He just announced he was in the portal. Ashton Woods.
She might be talking about Caleb Lavale from. I think he's from Atlanta. He went in the portal today, I believe.
I thought it might be Ashton because they recruited Ashton really hard too. I would imagine there's some conversations. The issues you run into there is it's a space thing, so you'll probably need to see a linebacker leave to add another linebacker, if that makes sense. And there's one I think will leave shortly that's not been playing or dressing. There's a hint for you. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah.
Let's take a time out here for a second. It's a good time to take a time out. Sorry, just a little bit. It's been a long month for us.
That drive from Birmingham back was something else.
Yeah, it was. All right, Alex. Let's talk about our friends at Section 103. Alex is rocking the cap there.
You can
They bring
see
you the best in Georgia Tech gear. Alex shopped heavily there. They've more than made their money back on their investment in JOL advertising this year and Alex's purchases. Alex, tell them a little bit about your love for Section 103.
I've got this one. This was one of my favorites that I got the other day. When they came out with the hat line, extremely high quality. Like I was telling Kelly, sometimes these smaller companies, start doing hats, and it's just like the cheapest made hats in the world. These are like very high quality. They look good. They're comfortable. I got that one, and I got don't worry about my bald head there. I got this one too. I got my brother's a couple of my older brother, the Ramblin' Wreck hat, very nice. I got them both the Coach Key polo, and both of my brothers will be dressing like Coach Key to the games they go to next year. But yeah, really good stuff. I got a couple gift cards for my nieces, so Section 103 is getting a little bit of my money, so that we put our money where our mouth is. So pretty good stuff, made by Georgia Tech people. The best Georgia Tech merch you can get on the internet. So good stuff.
Well, thanks Section 103 for sponsoring us, and I appreciate it. And I'm glad Alex is fully into it. And getting some suggestions here, I will pass them along to our friend. So yeah, I guess let's go back to the questions, pick a couple more.
Yep. All right. So on the defensive side of the ball, what area needs the most improvement? That's the next question.
Oh, I guess for like going into next season.
Yeah.
I think they need to have more success in terms of the pass rush, like getting actual sacks. I think they got a lot of pressure. Romello was good at getting pressure, was not good at actually completing the sack. Someone asked about Romello earlier. I think the further we are getting away from the bowl game, the less likely it would be that he would do a U-turn in the portal, to answer Andrew's question from earlier. And that's fine. They can focus their energy and money in other places. But yeah, they haven't found enough consistent pressure since Keon White year from those defensive end spots. A really game-changing play at one point was a missed sack in the bowl game by Josh Robinson that I think ended up yielding a first down run by Pavia that ended up maybe giving them their last touchdown. there's a ton of those moments, right? Like where they're, and some of it's like talent, skill. Like Josh is not the fastest guy, so he got outflanked a little bit there. But like there's just been a lot of those moments where they got a hand on a guy or they spun him around or whatever and didn't get the sack. And finishing those plays, I think, would be huge. And taking that next step as a defensive line, I think, would be big. The linebacker play can still have some room for improvement. The secondary, I thought, played pretty well. Warren Burrell didn't play well after he got hurt in the back half of the season. I mean, in the last two games where he was hurt, trying to play through it. Losing Rodney Shelley was huge. He was playing really well. And especially in the second half of the season. Shelley's back. You lose Burrell. You lose LaMiles, who had a rough bowl game. And you lose Tay Seymour to the portal. And they brought in some guys, Kelvin Hill and
Daquan White.
yeah, Daquan White from Eastern Michigan. Is that right?
Yep.
And then they're still looking at some other portal guys in the secondary, and obviously you have a lot of talent coming in as well with the Dalen Pinsons, Elgin Sessions, Tay Harris, and Elgin. We saw at they were at the bowl game hanging out, so they'll be there for the spring. It's easier for those guys to play a little bit earlier. You have the returning guys like Christian Pritchett or Troy Stevenson, who we haven't seen yet, Nehemiah Chandler, we haven't seen yet. So we'll just keep an eye on all those guys, and I think that it'll be interesting. And yeah, Hal's right. They missed quite a few of these guys in the bowl game. Corey Robinson at left tackles missed a little bit. Ethan had a rough game. They didn't really have maybe the best plan there to substitute him if he was struggling. Um, uh, Romello, they missed a little bit at defensive end. Kevin Harris had to play way too many snaps and wasn't as productive as he should have been. And then obviously, losing Tay when LaMiles was struggling and Clayton got hurt early in the game, it kind of had a little bit of an impact there as well. So I think they definitely will continue to reload, and we'll see what happens there. I'm curious to see how these young guys do. They have some really young, talented players coming in the secondary, and then some of the skill spots too on offense. Some really good pieces via the portal, and then also those young running backs they brought in Hulsley.
I think Omar Daniels played really well over the second half of the season. I'm excited to see what kind of the step he takes from this year to next year, and
Yeah, he made
get,
that move from nickel to safety, and then just kind of blossomed. He was
yeah.
he was like a decent backup nickel. You could see like some flashes, and they let him play safety, and then he just balled out.
And I think he'll just keep getting better with more consistent playing time this next season. So I'm excited about him. I think that there was another question about are you surprised that the ACC or JBAT hadn't issued a statement about the officials on Friday? I'm not surprised. Like they're not gonna.
Have y'all ever met JBAT?
Yeah.
JBAT, if I were to send him a text message, his response back to me would be like a prepared statement. Like he wouldn't text me back like, "What's up, Kelly?" Blah blah blah. Like he is a very buttoned up guy that grew up in Charlottesville and went to University of North Carolina. Like that, he is not like hot-headed Mark Harlan at Utah, who when it stormed their press conference, sat down at the podium instead of the head coach, and then blasted the Big 12 refs. That's not going to be something that would be tolerated by Angel Cabrera or Georgia Tech. Like that's not who you are as a program. I understand what you are a little bit there. Like that would just be looked frowned upon. And really, what does it serve? It's not like it was a league game or something. That's where I understood a little bit of Harlan freaking out because that was a league game. But with that, I don't know. So I would be shocked to see something like that ever happen with where Jay like blows up in a game with theoretically neutral officials.
And I mean, and at this point, there's nothing that can be done. Like obviously,
No, they're not going to go back and forfeit the game or whatever because the officials sucked. And you'd have to like prove like something really dramatically bad happened, like you know, um, like with the NBA ref scandal where the guy was gambling on games or whatever. You'd have to find something like that insane to make something actually happen, where maybe you would have a chance at like a game being nullified or something. But what does it matter? Like it was a bowl game. It's like a 15 extra practices. It sucks you lost it, but it is what it is. And it's not like they showed up like Florida State did in their bowl game last year, anyways.
Yep. There's a question about which remaining players in the portal do we have the best chance to pick up. I think you talked about the defensive line targets on the board in the
Yeah,
last few
there's one
days.
definitely that you can go read JOL. I did an update on recently that I feel really good about. Georgia Tech landing from a nearby school. That'll be your hint.
Which side of the ball has gotten the most help in the recruiting class and the portal?
I think it's been pretty even to me. Like
Yeah.
they're adding stuff on both sides.
I think position group wise, like linebackers gotten, I think it's going to be a whole lot more. It's going to be deeper and kind of more competitive to get reps with adding Jordan and the kid from Tennessee Tech's kind of an undersized linebacker too. This I think is going to play a little bit next year.
He was the guy that would have helped in this past game actually, because you could play him as a true Sam, Spalding, and
Yep.
It would have been interesting to have a guy like that, have enough bodies where you could do something like that for a bowl game when you're playing like a run heavy team like Vanderbilt is, where maybe that dude's athletic enough to give you maybe more than a nickel would in that situation. It might have made some sense to have that if you had a Charlie Thomas type, which is what that kid is, who can run and kind of just tackle people. That would have been an interesting move. I definitely think they've upgraded at linebacker quite a bit in the portal, and then you have EJ Lightsey coming back, who played his best game of the year probably in the bowl game, playing for Kyle Eford. You have Eford back. You have Jackson Hamilton and Tajay Butler back. So you got your 4 of your 5 core guys back at linebacker, and then you've now supplemented with 2 really talented guys. So I think that's a good opportunity there for them.
I agree with Hal. He said DB and recruiting. I mean, offensive line recruiting class was pretty darn good too. I don't know if they've had one like that in a really long time. Just overall, getting the depth of talent and offensive line in the class they did. So that position group is going to be deeper going forward too. There's a question about the process for Coach Key and the like submitting requests about officiating. I guess it wouldn't be to the Big Ten. I don't know. Like Paul Johnson used to talk about sending tape to the ACC offices. So that's kind of the question, is how he would contact, who he would contact, what the process would be for getting officiating stuff like that. I'm not really sure.
I may have joked with someone at Georgia Tech that they light the bag of dog poop on fire and put out somebody's doorstep as the only logical response to that officiating thing. There's nothing you can do. Like when it's outside of your league, you have no. It was like the same people asked me that question after the Georgia game. Like when you're outside of your conference, no one knows. This is a joke to Jay Batt when I saw him a couple days after the Georgia game. I told him that everybody kept asking me that he thought it was interesting. And I said, yeah, I told them that they just gave them a fruit basket from the league office for helping Georgia win that game. That was their punishment for the for the officiating miscues in the Georgia Tech. I mean, nobody cares. Like you guys care, Brent obviously and the staff and the players and their parents and family care, but like no one else can. Nothing's going to happen to those people. Short of maybe if there's some sort of grading system and they get even crappier assignments or something, that would be about it.
Yeah. Let's see here. There's a question about what's it going to take for the team to take the next leap mentally to putting teams away. I think that's just part of the being more consistent winners. Like that's what he's been trying to do the last couple of years. Is he talks about having the same
Lose small, win small, win big.
Yep. Every week you got to have the same mentality. You can't be up and down. You know, it's got to be
Charles
the
coming
same.
with the old joke, baby. At least they didn't call us for a chop block, Charles said. Oh, those were the days. The old chop, phantom chalk blocks. Mark Stoops is still bitching about that guy who pulled himself into a chop block and got hurt in the Gator Bowl in 2016.
There's a question that I don't really know. It says, just how motivated is Brent Key for 2025 and beyond? I say he's pretty motivated. I mean, the last two losses, I'm pretty sure he's taken them about as
I
bad
didn't
as
sleep for
anybody.
48 hours after the
Yeah.
Georgia one.
So
No, I mean he wants to get this. He has a goal in mind and where he thinks the program can get to, and they're nowhere near his ceiling that he envisions. So we'll see. Everybody's just got to relax, let the man do his, as the kids say, let him cook. That's probably like a saying from like 15 years ago, and it shows how old we are, Alex.
let's see here. There's a. I think we've talked about this a few times on here, but what are your thoughts on Fran Brown in Syracuse? Um, I think we talked about that pretty good. A little bit over the top, in my opinion. But hey, he's the only one that's got a bowl win out of the ACC so far this year. So I guess it's
I
working.
mean, good old Fran Brown. It's an interesting approach to coaching. You know, if I say too much, he's going to cut out my video and put it up as a recruiting tool for his team next season because I guess he watches like everything people say about him. So I will I will not give them locker room ammo by saying anything about Fran Brown.
There's a question about the portal. We kind of talked about what's left, what they still want to get. Um, I'm looking here, scrolling through. Let's see. There it says that, the off season, the schedule is still to be set, and the portal window is 2025, setting up to be a special year in your opinion.
I think there's a good opportunity for it. It starts in Colorado against the fighting Deion Sanders, and who knows what the hell that team looks like with a lot of new players and quarterback, and they've added some interesting guys in the portal. They do the same thing that they always do. They go out and just sort of buy kids. There's literally a kid I know really well that just committed there. That it was legit, just like a straight financial transaction. Like it wasn't even like he was all that interested in going to play for them. So it is what it is. We'll see.
Let's see here. There's a question about what's the status of the younger DL like Shamik Jones and Landon Marshall.
Shameik, they've been talking about. Zeke talked about him at our. Was it Zeke? No, sorry, it's JJ Vandenberg talked about him at um, the last media avail we had for the bowl game in Birmingham the day before the game. JJ said he's been coming along really well. They dressed him, and he was the 6th D tackle in the game Saturday. Landon just hasn't clicked yet. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if that was looking a little bit like a mess there so far with him. He just is not developing. They haven't dressed him at all this year. Maybe he dressed in the bowl game, but we'll see if he's there in the spring and if the light starts to come on. Sometimes it takes a little longer for D linemen. Jordan Boyd they like a lot at defensive end. Just really athletic guy, just raw. Jacob Cruz, Brent talked about him. He was the guy that was playing linebacker and wide receiver in high school, and now is playing Mike linebacker. Now is playing edge, which is what everyone kind of envisioned him as. Tech took him as a middle linebacker when they changed schemes. It didn't make a lot of sense, so they moved him to the edge as his body continued to develop, and he's just kind of learning how to play there. And then Amontre Bradford's another young guy that they're excited to see what he could do in the future as well.
Yeah, Amontre played a good bit of special teams this year too. Um, they asked about Kai Greer on the OL. He hadn't been talked about a lot.
I'm not, he came. So the problem Kyle ran into is Kyle came in. I mean, sorry, Kai Greer came in, didn't come in early, so everyone else had to jump on him. So he's just way behind. Jameson Riggs was, working backup left tackle for bowl prep. Jordan Floyd was the guy that Jordan Williams shouted out. at that bowl media avail is a guy who's coming along, young right tackle, Ben Galloway, all those guys. I think Kai's at the bottom of that pecking order right now, and be interested to see what he does. That's a guy that could decide to try his luck elsewhere, especially with the group of kids that are coming in behind him.
Let's see. There's a question about Haynes King. Will he need surgery prior to spring practice, or is
Not a
rest the
surgical thing.
solution? Do I?
Not a surgical thing.
Yeah, I gotcha.
With his shoulder.
Just kind of rest and
just really, yeah, as a rest thing.
Let's see.
Sure, rain and cold probably didn't make it feel great for him though.
Here's what we kind of talked about this during the game too. Somebody was asking why didn't Philo play. That's kind of
I thought the series where they might put him in was the one with the stupid punt return thing, and then Haynes threw the pick like 3 plays into that drive. I think it was, or they got a first down and then he threw the pick right after that into that tight window. But yeah, that was the point where I thought he was struggling to throw the football. Maybe that's where you decide to make the change and put Philo in and let him, and then they were at the 2. So you're not putting him in that situation. And so they ended up sticking with Haynes there. And then when they came out of the weather delay, Haynes started playing really well, throwing the football much better. So I don't know what it was, but it was interesting to see that he suddenly looked comfortable. Yeah, Haynes was short arming a lot of passes early that really got the offense off, and then they couldn't run. Credit to Vanderbilt, they did a great job of shedding blocks on the inside on a lot of those QB draw plays. There were a bunch of them that were wired for a big play, and the defensive lineman just made a great play, peeling off a Weston Franklin or one of the guards to get a hand on Haynes to slow him down enough to stop him from being able to run the football. Because there was a couple of times where they had that wired for 20 yards and then got 1 yard because the guy did a great play.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought they might give Philo a series or 2. I was surprised he didn't see that, but I mean, I guess the game kind of dictated that a little bit. I'm not really sure. I think we've gotten to the end of the questions here. Most of us just commenting back and forth.
Charles asking this question. I didn't see this. Did Vandy's number 10 really grab Haynes King in the groin? Is this something that was on TV or something that we just didn't see?
I hadn't heard about that one.
Me either, man. I don't know what that is, but
I'm sure it wouldn't have been called.
No, they'd have called Haynes King for slapping his hand away or something. Well, that guy from Arkansas, you've seen that video, right, on Twitter or on social media? The guy from Arkansas stepping on that dude's ankle, like to try to break it.
Yeah.
Some weird stuff. Nancy wants to know what happened to Trey Cooley. He got beat out by a bunch of other dudes that played really well. He was sitting on the end of the bench, and he was dressed Saturday, just wasn't in the game plan. I expect you will see Mr. Cooley in the portal. He has 1 year left.
Yep.
Harold says the Ireland Game Trophy is the best looking trophy in football. We have 2 of them. It's a nice achievement of 2024. What do you think? Yeah. I like all the trophies and the glass helmet that Brent tried to put on. We're in Ireland that made all of us laugh. I think it's cool. I think, it was a good season and a chance to be a little bit more special. But at the end of the day, they finished right about where I had them at. And you get ready to gear up for a big year this coming season. And this is a chance for Brent Key, if the team stays healthy, to compete for an ACC championship and be in that mix and that hunt. And maybe even be a ranked team early in the season next year if they can win in Colorado early. So I'm excited to see what happens.
I don't think the Georgia Tech folks will be chomping at the bit to sign up for a week 0 game or Ireland game again for a while. I think they've had their feel after the way it kind of made it a little bit of a marathon early in the season. So
yeah, it was.
I think it might be a while for a game like that again for Georgia Tech, but who knows?
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us. Yeah, I think they'll take a punter in the portal. Someone asked that as well, if they can. We'll see. They're targeting a couple different specialists. And they already got a long snapper from the portal. So
And
I
they're
like
looking to
if you get a chance, check out Alex's tag under his name. You guys will get a kick out of that one. Appreciate everybody for joining us, and enjoy what's left of the college football season. And hopefully, for Tech fans, Georgia loses in their game in the Sugar Bowl, and everyone will be happy. And appreciate everybody. Happy New Year. We'll be back soonish. And thanks. And everybody, be safe out there.